All right. Good day, everybody. Let's see what we can do here today. Adjust the mic a little bit. There we go. All right. Rabbit. I know it's Wabbit, but Rabbit is stuck in my head. Sorry, Wabbit. Rich and Andy. Nice. You better bet. Yeah. Hey, Garen. It's all the usual suspects. Just a little bit. Just getting started here, getting a little warmed up. Let's see. Say a few hellos here. Wabbit, Rich, Andy, Garen, Amphonics. Hey, through the Rockies. Hi from Sweden. Thanks. I'm glad you like the tutorials. Cool. Let's see. Lemon Delight again. Hello. Midiphonic. Okay, see, try and do one where it's not 2 a.m. for you guys. I'm going to play for a minute or two, and we'll talk about what's happening today. If any of you saw the stream from last night, the highlight reel's not up yet, but we have a new sound. Just a couple new sounds. Let me put this one in here. This is the one I like the most. So I told the story yesterday about how the one time I met Keith Emerson in person, and this sound came right out of there. I don't know what you're listening to this on, but in these headphones, this is really good. these down a little bit. So, good day. Thanks for watching the Synth Seeker stream. My name's Luke. Jeff, hey there. I see Eric there. Cool. Nice. So, anybody who's new, if I miss you in the chat, I'm sorry. Moruil, I hope that's right. I met you in Andy's stream earlier today, so cool. Welcome. So, what's going on here? Because we've got a few new people, I'm going to give you the rundown. So, this is January. So, I'm trying to do a stream every day. This is a hybrid system. I've got modular, I've got monolithic synths, I'm running Ableton with a push, and so some instruments come from the box, some come from synths, some come from the modular. I was in modular a long time ago and got out. I escaped, sort of, but got sucked back in the fall, and I'm using January to try and learn or relearn how to. One of the reasons I got out of modular was because I couldn't achieve what I wanted to achieve musically in it. Not that it's impossible, but I just couldn't figure it out and was frustrated. But now I'm back again, and my goal is at the end of January to be able to control this modular and integrate it into the whole hybrid system in such a way that I can do the kind of music I want to do, which is sort of a jam, but really an arrangement. It's like improvisational arrangement, right? A lot of jams that I do end up being pick a chord, pick a root note, and we just drone on that and do variations of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I love doing it, as you will hear, because that's what I'm basically going to do today. But I want to be able to orchestrate it a bit more. So that's the goal. Okay. And hopefully by the end of January, I'll be doing performances as opposed to jams. We'll see. So gremlins in the system. The other day we had some weird clock issues where MIDI clock drift was making my delays dip. The delay times were going, it's interesting. I never did track it down. It's one of those power cycle and everything goes away, but it might be a thing where it's thermal and like heat builds up over time or entropy builds up over time or the gremlins just creep in. I don't know. Worry about it later. So the way everything is synchronized is the modular's obviously on an analog clock. Ableton's providing a MIDI clock for itself and for synchronizing like the LFOs on this sub 37 over here. The matriarch's getting its clock from the analog system. The way Ableton stays in sync with the analog clock is through a little module called the ML2 that establishes a Ableton Link network and translates between the two. So the laptop's on the Link network getting and generating MIDI clock, and that is kept synchronized with the modular over the Link network. It's Wi-Fi through the ML2 module, which is providing master clock to the whole modular. It works great. And I haven't had any problems with it. So be that as it will, be that as it may. All right, that would imply that I had a problem with it. I didn't have a problem with it. So it works great. So, all right, what we're doing today is if you've been to my channel, I do a lot of stuff in Berlin School-like places, right? My stuff doesn't sound like classic Berlin School. I sort of mix some prog in there. And so I talk about techniques and how to approach Berlin School, all right? So the way I advocate Berlin School, and it's not the only way, is you start with small repeating figures, right? So this sequence is a two-stage sequence. Right? Just two notes. It's going back and forth. You pick a key in a mode. What are we in today? We're in D Dorian. So D Dorian sounds like this. All right. It's all the white keys on the piano starting in D. There's a running joke how I don't like to play black keys. It's just easier to explain to people. When I say try this mode, if I could just express it in white keys, it's easier. The fun thing about Dorian is that the bottom half of the scale has a minor feel, sort of dark, mystical, right? And the top half has a major feel, right? So Dorian's this sort of split mode where the bottom half is dark and the top half is sort of lighter, happy. And you get, if you're going to be doing Berlin School, Prog, John Anderson, Vangelis kind of stuff, it's nice to be able to move around the keyboard or your grid and change the mood from a dark feel to a happy feel and back again without actually having to do any key changes. So if you're not a theory guy, and I'm not really a theory guy, you don't have to worry about it. Sort of dark. Right, but if we play on the top half, so I'm going to keep the same root, D, but if I play the top half, back to the bottom half. And now we're back in that sort of moody, dark place. So Dorian's fun. And I'm a bass player by trade, so you're going to hear some bass in here, as well as synth bass. I will occasionally play something out of key, so sometimes when I just want to be evil and you're in Dorian, you can pull a note out from D minor, like this B flat. It is a black key. Now, back to Berlin School. So I like small repeating figures, all right? I'm going to ignore the chat for a minute. So the way I approach Berlin School is short patterns, 3-note pattern, right? And we layer them. So I've got that pattern running. I've also got this pattern running. All right, so that was a 2-stage pattern. This is a 4-stage pattern. All right, and we layer them on top of each other. Right, and we get something that's a lot more complex without actually being more complex. Right, and I call that a bed, like a Berlin School bed. And these are 8th notes with a dotted 8th delay and a little reverb, or maybe a lot of reverb. And once you've got that, you can just play over it. You just select notes that are within the key you're working in. Outside, nothing wrong with that. So you've just got this bed running and these repeating figures. Now let's go back to our first figure here. So I'm using this sequencer called the Metropolix. It's a very nice sequencer. It has 8 stages, and I used to think more stages was better. I used to think 16-step sequencer with 16 pitches is better than one with 8 or one with 4. I've talked about this in previous streams. I'm not going to dig too much into it, but you can do a lot with just a few things, right? Especially if you're working in Berlin School. So let's just add a few more stages to this. Now we're in 3. There's 4. Let's go to an odd number. Let's go to 5. So if we layer that with our previous one, and let's bring one up an octave. It's a little quacky. Let's fix the attack. Once you've got this pattern running, you just play melodies over it. And they could be bass melodies. I have no issue with playing a melody in the bass. And then you play melodies in the more traditional sense. That's the basic gist of what I do. I make small patterns, I layer them, and then I play melodies over it. And sometimes I'll use a drone. Sustain pedal, that's droning, I can play around. All right. Let's pay attention to the chat for a minute. Let's see. Not a theory guy. Yep, Dorian. Dorian's popular. Lots of bass? Okay. Let me know if there's too much bass. Let's see. My wife calls the black keys sour keys. Okay. Let's see. E-flat minor pentatonic is a cool scale. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Where have I heard that before? Nice, Andy. Guitar brain theory versus keyboard brain theory versus wind control theory. I have scales that I hate love. Here's an interesting thing about grids. Some of you may have heard me say this. I'm playing this grid. I like grid controllers. I'm a terrible keyboard player, but I like playing the grid. The reason I like playing grids is because I'm a bass player, and a grid set up this way is basically a bass guitar neck with 7 frets. Oh, like open, the first line is open, and then frets 1 through 7, and it's got 8 strings. So the shapes you use on a bass guitar work on a grid. So power chord, right? 4th, minor 3rd, they're all the same. Octave. So any licks, if you play bass and you're one of those neck finger tapping kind of person, you can pick up a grid like that. Okay, that's just how it works. So, all right, let's finish up in the chat here. Let's see. This may be off topic. You want a tutorial where you can learn how to make my own music from a reference track from great masters like Tangerine Dream. I don't know if anyone I've never seen a tutorial where someone gives a tutorial on how to build from a reference track for anything other than like mixing and mastering. For composition, I assume you mean Through the Rockies. I don't know. You have to dig around. I don't know about that one. Let's see. All right, Synchrotron's gone. See ya, Andy. Have fun. Love the tonality. Thank you. Let's see. You've used my technique for adding notes gradually in the sequence. Cool. You should post those. I want to hear your stuff. If I have inspired you to make stuff, share it with me. It gives me a warm fuzzy. I work in tech, but I do teaching, so I like hearing from people to say that thing you showed me worked well, and now I'm happier. Great. Let's see. The song begins with a 4-minute intro. Through the Rockies, just take a whack at it. And when you run into problems, share with the community. It's like, I'm stuck on this. I get this far and then I get stuck. Any suggestions? And see what people come up with, right? A Taurus foot pedal would be nice. Yeah. So I'm using this bass is a sampled bass guitar with a Taurus style synth underneath it droning up from below. I'm a big fan. Let's see. Amphonics. Nice. You like the bass and the swirly sounds. Cool. Grids are super fun, and grids and basses. Rob, I don't know what the GM acronym stands for there, but Linstruments are great. It's the same grid, basically, just bigger and longer. Good stuff. This particular grid has MPE capability on it, but I think the Linstrument has had it for a long time, so it's nice if you want to really get expressive. Let's see. Let it snow. We have Snowmageddon coming here tomorrow, so I'm going to try and stream tomorrow morning as well, but if we lose power from the snow, I'll post something on YouTube that says, in the community, that's like, no stream today because I have no power. Nice. I'm glad. All right, let's go back. So let's play with these patterns a little bit more. So if we look at this pattern, let's make it a little longer. Let's bring it down an octave too. Oh, you know what? It helps if you modify the actual pattern you're talking about. That's the only problem with that's my main problem with modular, is because everything is like modal. It's like the screen says that you're editing this thing, but you don't have you're not in the right mode. Like this sequencer has 2 voices you can edit, and there's like a little button that's lit up to tell me which one it is. But I'll sit here and dial away and change notes and things like that, and nothing happens. And I'm like, what's going on? It's because I'm editing the one that's currently silenced. Go fig. All right, so where are we? Let's add some more stages. All right. So one of the other things I like about this sequencer is you can add variation to a particular stage. So this 7th stage here, you'll hear one pitch go up, then go back down. So you can add these variations, they're called accumulators, that take the pitch, and every time the loop comes around, it modifies that pitch by adding or subtracting something from it. So I've got, at the end of this little sequence, which is an 8-stage sequence, I've got one note that's alternating between these things, up, down. So it's an 8-stage sequence, but it's playing a 16-stage sequence from a harmonic perspective. You can, and the sky's the limit, you can get really, really intricate with this stuff. So we'll keep that one running. Let's bring in one of the others. So we've got one that's just one stage running over here. We'll layer them, put a little drone under it. And we'll start adding stages to this one over here. So it's only one. I did it again. Editing the wrong one. There we go. 3. We'll drop it an octave so it's easier to hear. That's 4. I kind of like that. all the melodies I improv on the fly are winners. 'Cause that one wasn't. Let's do this. So one of the advantages of having a hybrid system here is that some of the instruments are going through the box, right? So in the case of the bass, it's going through the box. All right, I think I can do that. All right, so what I'm going to do is, because it's going through the box, I can sustain it, which I've been doing, but I can also make a little loop, right? We'll do a little live looping, or if you're using a looping pedal or something, if you're in a DAW-less place, right? So let's put a little tiny bass loop under this. There we go. else is going on here? Let's see. You get stuck in an 8-bar loop and you don't know where to go? Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff out there for how to work through when you're the tyranny of the loop, right? Especially if you work in a DAW where everything's a clip and everything's like a loop. But if you're working in a sequencer, it's always a loop. There are ways to get out of that, right? You can sequence your sequencers. Oh, that's something we could talk about. I'll get back to that. Okay, we'll talk about Through the Rockies. We'll talk about sequencing your sequencers in a little bit. Okay, let me finish. Let me get through the chat here. Eric S is giving suggestions. Thank you, Eric. It's really good when you guys talk to each other, right? I like, support each other, lift each other up. Let's vary this pattern a little bit. The chat. Let's put a little. There we go. We'll put those together. All right. And let's see. Mr. Schulz, good to see you. And Tracy, nice. If the chat's way back, I'm not going to scroll back for it. If I missed you and I haven't called out to you, I apologize. I love you. Well, love's probably a little strong. I appreciate that you're here. Let's see. Read Eric's comments. That's what you meant for the tutorial? All right. Eric said, learn to take a ref track and load it in your DAW, and then use markers in the DAW to notate. Yep. And then delete the ref track and build yours. Yep, that's one approach, right? It's like back in the day when we would record, there was a thing you could get when I was a teenager that was a tape deck with a speed control on it. And if you wanted to learn a guitar solo or bass part, you could dub the song into that tape deck and then slow it down and play along. Right? We could do the same thing. So if you're using like Ableton or Bitwig or any DAW that will allow you to change the tempo without changing the pitch of the thing, right? It'll stretch. You could literally load the song you want, the reference track, and then just slow it down and analyze it one bar at a time, saying, what are these pitches, right? That requires that you have enough of an ear to listen to a note and then find it on the keyboard or the grid. But I'm sure you could probably do that, right? You wouldn't be making music if you didn't have, some kind of ear. And if not, there are an analyzer plugins that'll tell you what pitch it is. Pull the tuner out and stick it in there, although it gets a little shaky. But yeah, for sure. All right. Let's see what else we got in here. What BPM do you usually use when you're creating your sequences? Berlin School tends to be on the slow side. I'm between 80 and 110 BPM, but I like all sorts of stuff. So I'll do Berlin School techniques on funky dance music. Right? I've out on the channel. There's a playlist for performances, and that contains all sorts of weird stuff at all sorts of tempos. So I am not really a genre police kind of guy. I don't subscribe to use a genre to constrain what you're doing. That's a good approach for people who need those constraints. But I don't really pay attention to genre because Berlin School's not a genre. It's a collection of techniques and approaches to making music that if you follow them and you use synth sounds from the 70s, you're going to end up with that 70s sort of sound. But if you use, if you use dubstep sounds but use Berlin School techniques, what'll happen there? That's interesting. I haven't heard anybody do that yet. Give that a whirl, Let's see. What else? Do similar. Okay, people are suggesting things. That's good. Apologize for any typos. Nope, not a problem. We have a lot of Swedes in here. I'm liking that, right? I'm 1/4 Swedish, so I'm totally an American mongrel. I have my paternal grandfather is from Sweden. His last name is Jens. So got a little Dutch, a little Swedish, a little Irish, a little German. So let's see what else. Hey Malthus, good to see you. Let's see, I'm almost at the end here. Happy Saturday, thank you. Nice to catch a longer stream. Yep. All right, and you hear, all right, and okay, I think we're all in a good place. So let's talk about sequencing sequencers. Let's change this pattern a little bit more. Try and vary it up a little bit. My ear gets fatigued. I get bored with it. The drone too. Let's change the drone note. All right. So that's the beauty of some of Berlin School. If your patterns are within a particular key, you can play your bass melody. It's called bass reharmonization, but you can do it. It doesn't have to be in the bass register. It can be anywhere. Like, that's one chord. When you take those notes in that pattern combined with this note, that implies a chord for your brain, and you hear a particular harmony, right? Here's a new bass note. Those patterns haven't changed at all, right? And now I'm hearing a new harmony. Just tend to go back to the root of the key because it's like home and it's resolved. All right, let's talk about sequencing sequencers. Okay, so I'm going to get real simple here. Let's take this down to, this may make you annoyed. I'm going to leave it on one stage. Okay, there we go, one stage. So this sequencer is playing a one-note pattern. Okay. So these Metropolix sequencers have actually 3 sequencers in them. They have 2 for doing pitches, and they have 1 for doing modulation or voltage sequencing. All right. And you could do, you don't need a Metropolix to do this. You can do this with any sequencer, right? As long as you've got a sequencer and you've got some way to sequence new voltages going to it. You can do this in the box with MIDI, right? You can use if you can sequence MIDI CCs, you can use CCs to sequence a series of transposition changes for MIDI. Anyway, let's talk about the sequencer though. So, sequencer track 1 is playing a one-note sequence with one note on it. All right. Sequencer track 2, the modulation track, that's track 3, is not doing anything. It's saying, okay, yeah, keep playing your note. But if I bring it up and I let it, so what I've done is, and I'm sorry I don't have a cam I can pull into the sequence to the gear, right? But so what I've done is, in the stages of the modulation sequencer, I have changed the voltages over time. And what it does is it adds together the voltage of the modulation sequencer with the voltage of the pitch sequencer. And when you add those together, sequencer math, it changes the pitch by a certain amount. So even though pattern 1 is a one-note pattern, we hear it change because being added to it is a voltage sequence that's additively changing the pitch. So if I was to do a hand gesture, right? That's the pitch that the oscillator is told to play, the sequencer. And then I send a negative voltage to it, add it together. Then a positive voltage, right? Add it together. So that's how you sequence a sequencer. Now, if this is like old news to you, I'm sorry, flash of the blinding Captain Obvious, but I didn't know that for a long time. It took me a significant amount of time to go, why does everyone like these tiny sequencers, 4-step sequencers, 8-step sequencers? What are they doing with them? And then I realized, they're stacking the sequencers and they're having this sequencer being sequenced by this one over here, right? So if I bring this track 1 sequence, which is just playing one note, if I let it play its entire pattern, you get something really magical. You get chord changes from a single sequencer. Right? So we're up, adds voltage to all of the notes in the sequence, and then subtracts voltage from all the notes in the sequence. I gotta think about what am I adding here? Right? And to be cheesy, the voltages I put in is like a standard 4-chord song. So let's bring them all in. sequence sequencers. I'm not prepared to actually follow that pattern with both hands at the same time, but you can do it, right? So that was the discovery I made in the last day or two. I'm like, oh, this sequencer's got an extra third channel that you can use to do modulations to the other ones. It's pretty awesome, right? So this takes me one step closer to my goal at the end of January to be able to have an arrangement actually happen in here. What I'd like to be able to do is control when the stages change, right? Because as I mentioned in yesterday's stream, I've also found a way to voltage control key and root changes as well. Again, I'm not a super theory guy, but I'm pretty sure I can do what I want to do by sequencing the sequencers and sequencing key and root changes. And if I'm boring you, I'm sorry. Let's go back to Berlin School stuff. Let's do this. The one danger about chord progressions is they do get old really fast if you don't modify them. So let's go back. So let's take it back to the nice thing about Berlin School, the nice thing about droning is the patterns become more hypnotic than repetitive, right? So you just add some very small changes. Let's add a ratchet. Someone asked about a ratchets the other day. So what are we listening to? We're listening to these patterns. So a ratchet is when you take a step and you subdivide it. So like all of these are eighth notes. Bum, 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 bum. Let's add a ratchet to this one. That's a ratchet. That's a double time ratchet. So I've got 4 in the space of 1. I like 2. Right? And then what I like to do with that is add one of those accumulators to that ratchet. There we go. Make it really, really accentuated. It's a little too much, but if you're doing space, cosmic rock, you got little twinkles going off in the distance. Maybe a little too much. And let's do this. There, now when we bring the other pattern in, it adds a little more variation that keeps your brain entertained, or gets it even more hypnotic. following through the chat here. Let's see. So we've had people try it. How do you pronounce that modular name, XAOCC? Is it chaos, right? Or is that actually like Cyrillic letters that have different sounds? You know, because isn't that a Russian company? I don't know. I don't know what a symphonian is, but I will look into it, Jeff. Someone else is from Sweden. I'll let you guys out each other as far as your localities. It's not socially correct anymore to like just type ASL, right? Age, sex, location. We don't do that anymore. And to add to this mess, right? I haven't even done anything like it's just layers on layers, right? So like we could add controls, have another device or controls for playing the modulation of the effects themselves. Like right now, the reverb and the delay is like super static. So you could have an LFO modulating your delay, modulation, or your reverb time or reverb size, right? Or interesting things like that. Tell you, having a grid helps. The lights, I can just glance at it and know whether I'm in key or not. Although eventually muscle memory takes over. I've been playing one of these for a really long time. Let's change the bass drone. Let's go out of key. Let's do a B flat. Cyrillic. Okay, cool. I was guessing. AOL online flashbacks. You got it. Nice. And it's a sequencer. Okay. I'll check it out. Okay. Now, where are we? How are we doing on time? Okay, we're coming up on an hour. Well, let's keep going. So, I'll tell you a little backstory. I always have a story time in every stream. This is a bass playing backstory. So, when I was 17, I learned how to smoke cigarettes. And I was peer pressured into learning to smoke by the band I was in. It was a Christian rock band. This was in Sarasota, Florida. I am no longer, I would call, a religious person. My wife and I are spiritual people. If somebody's sick, we'll say a prayer, something like that. Karma, I think karma's a thing, right? But anyway, 17, I wanted to be in a band. I wanted to be in a band really bad. And there were no bands with any openings in the school I was in. So I answered an ad in the paper to be a bass player in this band. It just said rock band. I'm like, all right. I show up, and it was a band practice, and we were playing pop tunes. We were playing Journey and stuff like that off the radio. And it was relatively normal, and everyone seemed nice enough. Drummer, guitarist, singer, and me. Oops. A little jazz note there. And when the rehearsal was over, they're like, okay, you're in. It's like an audition. I'm like, yeah, you play fine. You can come in. And I'm like, great. And they go, have you been baptized? I'm like, my mom says I was. They're like, okay. And they join hands and form a circle around me. And they start giving me the spiel. Now, I got no problem with people who, have their beliefs and they want to share them. But I don't like being pressured. And so they joined hands around me and they wanted me to join their church. And I begged off. I'm like, all right. Well, then after that, we're just hanging out. They're like, you want to hang out? I'm like, oh, okay. And they all start smoking. And I'm like, I don't smoke. They offer me a cigarette. And they're like, you should. It's cool. Literally. They said, it's cool. And so we drove to a 7-Eleven and they got a pack of menthol cigarettes. They're like, because menthol's easier to learn how to smoke with. And they basically taught me how to smoke. And I continued to smoke, switched away from menthol eventually to Marlboro Reds, the preferred cigarette of the denizens of Florida. And I smoked for a couple years till I met my wife, and she refused to kiss me until I quit smoking, which I did that day, cold turkey, and haven't smoked since. So I learned to smoke by peer pressure from the Christian rock band I was in, but all it took was wanting to have sex with my wife to get me to quit. So that's the little story. That may be entertaining and maybe not, but you're going to get a story on every stream. All right, let's go back to synths. Play a melody, I've said this in other streams, when you play a melody, try and play it exactly the same twice or real close. Because it sort of accentuates in your brain. What do they say? Repetition legitimizes. So you repeat it at least twice, and your brain starts to expect it. And then you add a little variation. And it's just an easy way to write melodies. A lot of times, for years, I overcomplicated my melodies. It's like, let's play as many notes as I can in a long series, right? I still play bass that way, right? You'll see me noodle, and I'll just do a huge run that goes all over the place, and there's no repetition. That's okay for showing off or, musical masturbation. But if you're going to make a melody that's compelling, repeat it at least once. Yes. That's 2. Now we'll repeat it again with a little variation. And we'll go back to the first one again. feels like coming home, right? Like that. That was sort of a mistake. We'll just repeat it again. It's like, yeah, I meant to do that. It was intentional. About an hour, and I think I've said everything that I had planned to say, and I hope this was entertaining for you. You have to forgive me, I am pretty new to streaming. This is the 7th day that I've done serious streaming. I am not up to Synchrotron's 3-hour marathon streams yet, so I think I'm gonna pull it all down, call it a day, and let's see. Let me just clear up the chat here. Let me bring the vary the pattern a bit, and then we'll go through the chat, answer any questions or laugh at any jokes, and we'll see what's what. All right, let's see. Oof, Reds. Yeah. I don't smoke anymore. It's not an issue. Let's see. If my modular system was supported like that, I'd be given prayer too. Yeah, sure. Stories is why I'm here. Yeah, Rich, you and I, we like sharing stories. Much more in the sequencer. Got a story. Your daughter started to correspond with a girl who likes photography. We got invited to Stockholm. It turned out father was... I don't know where this is going, but okay. There's a little more added to the story. Yeah, Garen. Yeah. I may be conflating 2 different Christian rock band stories together. So, Joe Johnson. Hey, Joe. Good to see you. Hey, man. Sleep. I understand what you do. Was Benny Anderson's sound engineer. That's awesome. I hope. You're sitting in the studio with the SSL. Good God. Through the Rockies, I thought you were going somewhere real dark with that. So we got invited. We turned out that my daughter's pen pal's father was was Benny Anderson's sound engineer. That's very good. Okay. Repetition adds legitimacy for sure. Let's see. Repetition works for mistakes. Absolutely. It's jazz for sure. And Nanoside. Let's see. Nice. Through the Rockies. See, you should do a stream and tell the Benny story. That would be great. Because you can actually play that up. Like, we went and then it was not what we thought it was going to be. It ended up being awesome. So, very cool. What module do you use for the Ableton Link? David Higgins. It's called an ML2, and ML stands for Missing Link. The Missing Link 2 is from a company called Circuit Happy. I'm not a shill. The guy who makes it, his name's Ed. Circuit Happy is in Somerville, Massachusetts. My son lives in Somerville, and I met Ed at the local synthesizer meetup. I paid full price for this. It's called an ML2. He also makes these little boxes called ML Juniors. That's a USB powered box that has CV and MIDI clock outs for hardware. So like if you've got physical hardware like drum machines or synths that you can plug a DIN MIDI in, or it'll take analog clock and reset. It's the same thing. It's just a little teeny box that you power by USB. It doesn't have to be in a module. It's essentially the same thing. This is the module version, the ML2. They work great. Talk to the Quasi Wabbit, right? He's got a couple of the hardware ones as well, and he seems to be okay with them. So I haven't heard complaints. I think I influenced his purchase on that one. So let's see. possibly a rack cam. Yeah, I gotta figure it out. One of the reasons I'm willing to stream is because I told myself I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. Streamers like Synchrotron or serious streamers who have cameras and all that stuff. I don't. That's my phone right there. So I try and keep it. This is complex enough before you add the layer of camera studio stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. But I could do a YouTube video about something. So ask your questions, and it may be something that I turn a video into instead of a stream. But that's fine. All right, Amphonix, you got to run. Thank you for spending time with me. I appreciate it. Yeah, there's no stupid questions. Raider Rich, hashtag shill alert. Yeah, screw you, buddy. Is mayonnaise a Berlin School technique? There's a joke there, but I don't know what it is, Nano. I'm sorry. Citizen, you like this format? You like the stream format? Or you like my make a little noise, talk a little tech, tell a little story? I hope that works, because that's really the only thing I'm capable of doing. So that would be great. Cool. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to pull it all down. Thank you for your time. I'm going to do this again tomorrow if we don't get snowed out and lose power. Same time. And if you show up, great. And if you don't, that's cool too. And I do a highlight reel of these videos. I know a video every day is hard to I'm spewing content onto YouTube. So I also do a highlight reel. So if you've only got like 3 to 5 minutes, you can just watch the highlight reel, see if there's anything interesting in it for you. And then you can just skip the stream if there's no interest. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. I will talk to you all later.